another way that Cloré has pledged to support the community is by providing support at the education level to equip young people with the resources they need before entering society. In 2022, Cloré Beauty hosted a back-to-school drive in collaboration with One More Wear, where they provided school children in Scarborough with backpacks full of school supplies, along with free haircuts and braided styles. Cloré Beauty also became recently affiliated with the Black Student Lounge at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, and has been sponsoring events that have been curated for Black students on campus. These are good starting points, but today we would like to look at more ways that Black people can get the education and support and resources needed to improve their communities in Canada. So as the Black Student Support Facilitator at Toronto Metropolitan University, I have had the chance to speak with students firsthand about lots of their different experiences in entering society post-grad. And one of the most important reoccurring things that they've mentioned is feeling unprepared or feeling as though they don't have the resources available to them in order to be successful. And in working with Cloré, it was so exciting to see students really start to feel as though an industry that quite often keeps them outside of the confines of the space. We're really looking to support them and uplift them in any way that they could. And as the facilitator, I truly do see that education is empowering. It is a way to give students an opportunity to get so much further along in life and to really accomplish their goals with that support and that knowledge as a tool in their toolkit or on their belt. And in sort of reflecting on what it's been like post COVID, I think students are also kind of grappling with this new experience of what it means to work and what it means to have support from the community. And Cloré has done just that, not only by supporting them in more social cultural events, but also giving them the education that they need in order to succeed long-term beyond university. Jackie, my first question is for you. So what training courses and programs are available for young entrepreneurs that could support them on their journeys, if any?
There are billions and millions. It's really about doing the research and looking to find the ones that support, again, going back to one of my thoughts, the needs that you have, or the things that need to support you. So YouTube University is great. Take it with a grain of salt because there's so many people with so much information. Self-research is a big thing. You should consistently be learning, watching podcasts, aligning yourself with people who do the same things that you do or in that industry, learning from them. Informal interviews are a really big part of your learning. Asking somebody to sit and talk with you for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, ask them questions, come prepared, and get their knowledge. Obviously looking at a university or a college post-secondary education program, and seeing what helps. Like, for a lot of those who don't know, I actually studied fashion design. So I went to school to be a bridal designer. I have a diploma in design and fell into PR. And back in 2016, when I was 27, 28, I did a post-grad in corporate communications. And currently now I'm signed up for a esports sponsorship program because the landscape keeps changing. Not that you need to be in every single program every year, but consistently apply knowledge. So looking at different business hubs, signing up for free webinars and courses online, just really applying yourself, but you have to also look. And if you want to break into different industries or different cities, countries, and markets, learn from those people that are in the US. If you want to work in the US market or you want to be in Asia doing stuff, learn their culture, their methods, the way they do events or the way they produce whatever it is, because every industry is different, every culture receives and operates differently. So really definitely doing research. Online is the biggest tool, I would say, right now, because you can learn from home while you're still working. But if you have the opportunity to go into a post-secondary institution, I say definitely go ahead and do that as well.
Right, absolutely. Eboni, my next question is for you. So in terms of financial literacy, what information is the Black community not receiving, and how can this gap be bridged?
Oh, that's such a deep question. I would say to answer that question, I also have to go kind of back in time because there's a lot of things that our community is not getting from financial literacy perspectives and, the understanding of concepts. But I have to unpack first the things that we've kind of internalized that have materialized in the way we receive and seek information. And as it's Black History Month, I think it's so important to raise awareness around this. The fact that as Black people, we literally in the slave days and when slave was first abolished, we did not have access to things like knowledge, the ability to build wealth, right? And so we had actual barriers whereby we couldn't read books. So when we were freed, a lot of us couldn't actually read it. It was something we had to unlearn and start learning again. On the other side of that, we weren't allowed to have conversations of generational wealth. And what I mean by that is slaves weren't allowed to own life insurance. And when they were freed, they weren't allowed to own life insurance. And so when we think of like how that conversation goes, for example, a lot of passed down mentalities around, I don't know what it is, I don't want to use it, I don't think we need it, and I don't trust it. And so when I think of like, our parents, and their parents, things like insurance, even investing, like growing up with my dad has told me one thing: I don't trust. Like, he just does not trust the banks. And that's why so many of our families, they'd prefer to just save 10%. It doesn't need to be invested in a floorboard, in a freezer underneath your mattress, right? They don't want their money to work for them because there's that idea of I don't trust. And that's because we were actually shielded from that, experience. And because of that, when we talk about things like generational wealth, our community's playing catch up because we weren't allowed to start building it. So when it comes to what we don't access, I think that for young Black entrepreneurs and professionals and people in particular, we've now romanticized this notion of investing so much that it gets me excited because like we just want to make money and we want to have these conversations of generational wealth, but it puts us in two boats. We're not as lucky as some communities where somebody just shows up and says, here's how you do this, let me walk you through this, right? We have to seek that information unless by some chance somebody above us in our lineage broke the cycle. Right. And so many of us are still in the process of breaking cycles of debt, breaking cycles of poor spending and not budgeting. And so when we're in that hustle and we want to build that wealth, some of us go out and get the information. Like Jackie said, YouTube University, like, I learn how to do it. I find the products, etc. For the other half, we want to get the information, but then we talk to somebody who makes us feel stupid. Like when I first was going to the bank, they never made eye contact with me because my account was always in overdraft, first off. So they'd like be like, what do you want to do today? And the first time that I had money in my account, they took me to the back. I was like, what's going on? Like, I felt like I was in an interrogation because they did ask, like, where'd you get so much money from? And they were telling me things I should do with my money, but it made me feel small. And I couldn't move on it because I didn't know what they were talking about. And they didn't invest the time to understand that I knew what they were saying. So it creates this dependency on people that we really can't trust per se. But now that there's a higher presence of people who speak like us, look like us in this industry, it's not enough yet, but it's a start. And so I think when it comes to what we need is we need more people in this industry. We need to understand the concepts of like the rule of 72 and why we need to invest. And we need to understand like leveraging debt, like again, super Caribbean, get a credit card, don't use it. And when I went to the bank, they forced me to take a credit card and I used it like it was cash. And I ended up in a very odd situation. Think about people who, like Jackie mentioned, when you want to get post-secondary education, you've got to pay for it, right? And unless you qualify for OSAP, I never did. I don't know why, but I had to pay for these things out of pocket. And if you do qualify for OSAP, now you have a major, liability hanging over your head. Right. And so these are things that we have to have conversations about. And so what I believe in is passing down, again, that Timbit-sized knowledge. I also understand that for our community, there's a lot of trauma and stresses attached to finances. There's a lot of habits that we've picked up that we don't even know where they've come from, this mindset bit. And so I believe in tackling the mindset. So like for me, my concept is I'm going to post all of this financial stuff. One, because I understand that people are not at a point where they're ready to attack the traumas that have them keeping on to those habits. I also understand that people don't want to feel stupid and they want to feel like they know what they're going into. And so the more that we do that and the more exposure our community has to easy finances, because the thing is finance is really easy, but they make it hard so that certain communities don't want to access it. And so once you break that stereotype and it's now accessible and easy, and we're actually people who look like us and talk like us are in our houses eating oxtail and curry goat while they're teaching us about this financial financial literacy, that's how we kind of, again, break that cycle.
Right, right. And if I could just pull a thread through both of your responses here, I'm getting that self-determination and trying your best to do research and really looking for that information is at the core, because as you're mentioning, Eboni, within the Black community, anything to talk about finances is triggering, right? It's like I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And it becomes this perpetual cycle of my mom didn't talk about it. My dad didn't talk about it. Their parents didn't talk about it with them. And it just continues to be this cycle of not really breaking those generational curses and building generational wealth. And so when we're able to get to those resources, it's not just having the opportunity to use them, but really taking advantage of them. So if you get to go to school, take advantage of that opportunity, connect, learn, do the research. If it's a matter of connecting with a financial advisor, you know, and having that representation piece, I really want to highlight that as well. Yeah. Having people who look like us in those spaces really do make all of the difference, because as soon as you walk into the bank, you know, you're worried you're in overdraft, the people that are giving you side eye, and what are you supposed to do, right? What can you do but just sit there and feel small? And that's, I think, a lot of how so many Black people feel when they walk into these financial institutions. I feel small, and how am I supposed to get this? How am I supposed to make sense of this? So brilliant responses by both of you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I will give
I'll just jump in real quick on that too, because you know, for me, one of the things that I've been doing as an entrepreneur is, you know, there's a ton of entrepreneurs that I know and I work with, and one of the things that we've been doing is really sharing best practices and talking that conversation. Right, there's a lot of Black event professionals that are now getting some opportunities, and we're trying to say, okay, well, what do you charge? Well, how do you manage this expense? Oh, could we potentially share that expense? Oh, well, what is your profit margin? And again, because in our community we don't have these conversations, we're really not sure, and then sometimes we're, you know, competing in ways that we don't need to compete.
Exactly.
Right. But if we can have those open conversations and help each other grow through that, we'll all benefit and we'll all become more profitable. So I think just continue to have that conversation around finance and where you're at and how to get better at it is a way to grow.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I'll say quickly to that, it's really important to have, I call this a like-minded tribe. You have to surround yourself with the people that you want to, with the lifestyle that you want to achieve, right? You know, I tend to, especially over the last year, I've been privy and privileged to be around people in the real estate industry, and I'm not in real estate, but the high level conversations they have. And when we're having conversations, I sat there and I didn't feel small because I knew the worth of what I brought, but I went home rethinking everything because they breathed life into my ideas. Well, Jackie, why are you charging this? Why are you charging that? You should be charging this. And I remember one guy, we were all talking about how much we did. And this one guy's like, yeah, I had a really small quarter. You know, I only made $500,000. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. I was like, small quarter. But to them, that is a small fee. But what I loved about that is, even though I didn't make a fraction of that, they didn't make me feel small, but it was more encouragement. So having that like-minded tribe, but you have to want to get there. You know that saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You have to want more for yourself. And that includes surrounding yourself and putting yourself in a position to succeed. And when you go to the bank, and you know, people can only make you feel inferior if you believe that in yourself. So arming yourself with the knowledge to go there. You might be in overdraft, but I'm gonna be strong in my overdraft because I know where I'm going. Right. And you have to want that for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
My next question is for you, Dwayne.
Oh, bring it on.
As an expert in the event space, would you say that job fairs, career days, and events of that nature are an effective way of preparing young people for society? And if so, is this something we should see more of specifically in the Black community?
Yeah, you know, people want to interact different ways. And I think young people today is definitely interacting differently than when I was a young person. But one of the things, because I've been in management for 20 plus years, and one of the things I know with working with people, it's all about relationships. And when you have job fairs, it's really an opportunity for that employer to meet that potential candidate and that potential candidate to meet that employer. And you build that relationship. It's not a one-way street. It's not that the employer is hiring that person. That person is also hiring that employer. And I think when you have these job fairs and you get an opportunity to meet, sit down, connect, say, okay, yeah, there's something here that we can build and grow. And it's a great way to meet somebody that's not on paper, right? Because sometimes you can see somebody on paper and you say, oh, that's not the right person. Right. But you meet them in person and it's a totally different opportunity, because people might not be able to express themselves on paper the way they can in person. So those job fairs today, I think, are huge for companies, and I think it's huge for candidates looking for work, because they also get a chance to interview that other person or other company to say, well, tell me a little bit more about how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? Right? It has to be a two-way street. And that relationship that's built through those job fair or those events will allow people to know, yes, this is a right fit for me. So
I really like how you said it's a two-way street, because a lot of the time in those types of environments, it's the thought that I, as somebody who's seeking employment, am being interviewed by all of these people who might potentially hire me, versus I'm also interviewing them and getting to know more about all of these different businesses and how they can also support me in my longer term goals. And I think that's a huge point that a lot of folks miss in those events as well. So I'm really glad that you highlighted that.
And what I'll add to that actually is, you know, when a candidate is going to a company, like, the reason why a company wants you is because whatever it is that they're paying you, they're making 3 times as much. A minimum. Understand that when you're getting hired, you're bringing value to that company. So you've got to interview them, you've got to know your worth, and you've got to stand tall, right? And don't just, you know, sit back and think, okay, well, I need them. They need you. And you have to go in there with that understanding and that strength and that energy and that positivity and that confidence, because they will see that and they will want that. Right. And then you'll know there's a nice fit, and then your career path will grow from there.
I think to even add to that too, like when I think of the next generation, and like you mentioned, like every generation, there's something new where I'm like, I don't even know how to TikTok. I don't know how to do this stuff. But I think like that piece of adding that value, right? Like I think growing up, a lot of us are our parents just taking a job because they needed the income, instead of taking the job because it was what they were worth. And so this concept of going in and interviewing your potential employer to figure out, do you pay me what I'm worth? Do we align? I think it kind of also breaks another cycle, right? Because most of us work a 9 to 5, you know, until, you know, 40 years, and we retire and we're still kind of not happy with where we are. And it all builds up, and we're putting in all this time just to hate our job. Right. And it's kind of like wasted time. And I think that putting this value on yourself, it starts to manifest in other areas, in your business, if you want to start a business, in your finances, just adding that value and pouring into yourself. I really like that
1000%.
point.
And it's also understanding the scope of work. A lot of people go into these job interviews and the employer will ask you, do you have any questions? And you say no. You should always have a string of questions. What's your corporate culture like? What's the environment like here? Realistically, in this position, how much overtime do you do? Because when you ask these questions, you start understanding the scope, because what's written on paper is not always what you end up doing. So really taking the opportunity to ask those questions, because then you could sit back and reflect, can I commit to the over ask or the unheard ask that wasn't there? But when you ask the right questions, you will really get a greater detail of what it is that you're doing, and then know whether or not you have capabilities for it.
Right. It's a form of advocating for yourself in that sense, because if you're looking for something specific and you're able to notice right away, this company is not fitting that, knowing what you don't want is just as valuable as knowing what you do want. So now you can walk away knowing, okay, the next conversation I have is something more in alignment with what I want. Fantastic.
And the last piece I'll add, just to close this conversation off, is going back to the event side, is when you go to these job fairs and you're going to this thing, you see all these companies and you say, oh my gosh, where do I go? Where do I talk to? You want to look at the company that has created an environment that would be suitable to you. It's not just a desk and 2 people sitting behind the desk, right? Is it a company that's done something that's interesting to you? And do I want to participate with an organization like that? So that's something else to look at as well.
Brilliant. Awesome. That brings me to the end of the questions in this segment. So thank you all once again for your fantastic responses. I'm loving this conversation.
Yes. But in reality too, though, people really should do research before you go to a job fair.
You have to know which companies are there.
Even when I go to an event, I always find out who the stakeholders are or who people are going to be there, and I literally pinpoint. I'm like, I need to meet this person, that person, that person, that person, and I will seek you out in an event, because you should always have an agenda. There should be a purpose as to why you attend something, whether it be just to naturally connect with somebody, to meet a new person. To just be there and take up space, to me, doesn't make sense. Be intentional with your time. 'Cause I don't leave my house without purposeful meetings.
For sure.
Even if for a walk, it's for mental health. I'm going for 3 hours to do this, but like intention is what a lot of us are missing these days.
Right.
You said a 3-hour walk. Holy.
Yeah, girl, listen, I don't like